welcome to the local campaign. Our debate today is for the riding of Carleton for the federal election coming up on October the 19th. Thank you for joining us. We'll introduce the candidates in a moment. I'll explain the rules of the debate very quickly first. Each of the candidates will have 60 seconds, 1 minute, for an opening statement to introduce themselves to you. And we drew the order for those opening statements just a few minutes ago. After the opening statements are complete, we're going to move to a series of debates about important topics in the riding of Carleton, throughout the National Capital Region and across Canada in this federal election campaign. The candidates don't know what the questions are going to be, but I will start each debate by directing a question to one candidate. That candidate will have 1 minute to answer the question on his or her own, and then we'll open it up to a full debate involving all of the candidates on that particular topic. After a few minutes of debate, we'll wrap up by going back to the candidate to whom the question was directed, and he or she will have 30 seconds to finish up on that topic. Each of the candidates will get at least one question. We'll move through a number of different debate topics that way, and then we'll wrap up with closing statements that will also be 1 minute in length, and they'll be in the reverse order of the opening statements. So let's meet the candidates who are seeking your support on October 19th in the riding of Carleton. Representing the Green Party is Deborah Coyne. The Conservative candidate is Pierre Poilievre. The Liberal candidate is Rodgers, and representing the NDP, Larocque. Welcome to all of you. Thanks for participating in the debate. And let's start with the opening statements. And Deborah Coyne, the Green Party candidate, you're first.
Thank you, Mark. This election is about getting Parliament working again to serve the people, not the politicians. For over 9 years, Stephen Harper has governed out of the Prime Minister's office, bypassing Parliament, and systematically shrinking the ability of the federal government to act in the national interest. Under the Harper Conservatives, we are losing our sense of what holds us together as Canadians. Carleton needs a representative who will ensure that we get things done for the benefit of the country and the next generation, not just the next election. A vote for me and the Green Party is a vote for thoughtful, principled representation. It's a vote for constructive collaboration to build a better Canada. Together, we can begin the job of holding the government truly accountable to the people of Canada. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next up is the Conservative candidate, Pierre Poilievre.
Thanks, Mark. Thank you for joining us. This election is about who has a low-tax, balanced budget plan to protect Canada's economy. Balanced budgets are important. They mean that we're not borrowing to pay the bills. Politicians who spend money they don't have will have to pay it back, plus interest, later on. And that money comes out of your pocket. Now that Conservatives have balanced the budget, we can help families, seniors, and small businesses balance their budgets. We've done this by bringing in income splitting for families and seniors, by expanding the universal child care benefit, starting this past July, by lowering small business taxes so that they can afford to hire more people and generate economic growth. And if re-elected, under this balanced budget, we will bring back the home renovation tax credit so that you can improve your home, save money, and create jobs for our tradespeople. This low-tax, balanced budget plan will protect our economy and keep Canada strong. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next up is the Liberal candidate, Rodgers. Go ahead.
Folks, I'm running in this riding because it's my home. My wife Jenny and I are raising our son Cameron there. We have family roots there. We play there. We do music there. I'm involved in our church there. This is our home. We were there before this election, and we'll be there after this election. And you know that this job requires more than flyers and photo ops. It requires a member of Parliament who can connect national issues to local needs. And that's the sort of MP that I will be. Someone who is genuinely from this community, who will work for this community. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Finally, the NDP candidate, Larocque. Go ahead, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. I'm running in this election because I believe we can do better, and the people of Carleton deserve nothing less. I'm running because I've seen firsthand how the Harper Conservatives have turned their backs on our small businesses. I work in a family-owned construction company my father started with hard work and determination. But while the Harper Conservatives have given billions away to large corporations, they've done nothing for the small shops that contribute so much to our local economy. I'm running because I've seen firsthand how the Harper Conservatives are leaving today's families behind. I think the people of Carleton are looking for someone who understands their concerns, who will fight for them. I worry about balancing the budget and about finding quality childcare. This is what people talk to me about on the doorstep, and these are the things that I want to fight for in Parliament. I'm running because I work hard to balance the budget at the end of the month, and I believe our government should too. I'm ready for change, and I believe after 10 years of Stephen Harper, voters in Carleton are ready for change too. Thank you.
All right. Thank you to all the candidates for your opening statements. We're now going to get into the heart of the debate, and I'll begin with a question to Deborah Coyne, the Green Party candidate. Let's talk about transit, and when we get to the debate portion, there are lots of different directions we can take this. There's issues around how jobs are being moved out of the downtown core and what impact that's having on transit in our community. But in the first instance, I want to ask a specific question, which is, should the federal government fund and support a light rail link to the airport? This is one of the city's priorities, but it's not something that has yet been committed to by any level of government.
In my view, absolutely, and on behalf of the Green Party, we're all about getting more people off the roads into public transit. But the main thing in terms of getting this link done, because it's a kind of no-brainer for a capital city to have that, is to find the money. It's to get the infrastructure funding out there. One of the things that the Green Party is promoting is even going beyond dedicating money and lots of money towards transit and participating with municipalities. It's creating an infrastructure bank where we can use the leverage, the borrowing power of the federal government, and get much more money out of private sector pension plans invested into projects that make sense. So this is one way that we have to approach infrastructure in the future. The demands are just so large. The current deficit that the municipalities put forward is over $300 billion. We have to act now to find the funds and get the investment done, or we're leaving a huge debt to our kids.
Okay, it's open to everyone now on the subject of transit.
So the federal government has already committed 1/3 of the cost for the second phase of Ottawa's light rail project. In addition to that, we invested 1/3 of the cost to build the Strandherd-Armstrong, or what's now called the Vimy Memorial Bridge. This was my biggest project and biggest priority during my time in office. Very pleased to see it done, and the results speak for themselves. Locally, we're also investing to fix up the Manotick Hockey Arena, which will mean more space for seniors and youth, and better change facilities for the hockey players. So these are good local investments that we've been able to secure at a federal level that improve the quality of our life in our community. But we should remember that now is not the time to plunge our country back into deficit to fund these sorts of projects. We can fund them with a balanced budget. That's what we've demonstrated under the leadership of Prime Minister Harper. The funds for the next phase of light rail, the funds committed by the federal government, are committed within the framework of a balanced budget, meaning we will not have to borrow money that will need to be paid back later on with interest. That's how we protect our economy from all of the instability that we see around the world, the instability in the Chinese stock market, the debt crisis in Europe. We want to protect Canada against that, and Prime Minister Harper has a low-tax, balanced budget plan to do so. That's one of the reasons why I support his proven leadership.
I would just like to say that speaking of stability, my party is presenting an excellent plan to stabilize infrastructure funding over the next 10 years. This enables municipalities and provincial partners to plan ahead and for various projects like this. That's why we need to make these investments now, because this is not just about balancing the budget in the last 3 months. The current government has not balanced the budget. They claim to have balanced it, but they have not. They've left money on the table. They haven't actually balanced the budget. But right now, we're also looking at a massive infrastructure deficit in this country. Our provincial and municipal partners know this. The people in this riding know this, and that's why we've got to make these investments in our infrastructure now. They create jobs, but they also create long-term prosperity as well as stability for planning for our municipalities. They are crucial. They're too important not to do.
Well, that's interesting, because so far the provincial Liberal government hasn't committed, publicly committed or officially committed funding to the second phase of light rail. And that is despite the fact that it has doubled our provincial debt in Ontario. And we see the results. As a result of the debt that have been added by provincial Liberals, they are taking money away from education and health care to fund interest payments on that debt. Now that's the approach Justin Trudeau wants to take for the whole country. The last thing we need is to take Dalton McGuinty and Kathleen Wynne's disastrous economic policies and apply them at a national level to the whole economy. That's the direction Justin Trudeau wants to take. Conservative leader, Prime Minister Stephen Harper, wants to keep the budget balanced, keep your taxes low, and protect our economy.
Mr. Poilievre and Mr. Harper are very good at branding themselves good fiscal managers, but they are not, in fact, good fiscal managers. We are still in a deficit, and we have presented, as the Liberal Party, presented an honest, straightforward plan to Canadians as a way to grow the economy, to get out of deficit, but also to meet the infrastructure needs that we have in the long term. That's how we ensure long-term prosperity.
So I'm going to just interject here, and I'm happy to concede a bit to KC if you want, because I have another right of reply. But you'll see, Mark, that we've just diverted the debate into federal provincial issues or issues of deficit. We're not being innovative. We have a serious problem, $300 billion plus deficit, infrastructure deficit, whatever you call it, that is on municipalities. So I know the NDP and I know the Green Party are actually in favor of getting municipalities more to the table, whether it's through a Department of Cities, Department of whatever, raising the direct links with the federal government. And that's what an infrastructure bank is all about, is trying to get the focus on how do we get the money, not just from governments, but leveraging the borrowing power and getting other funds invested in the future of this country. Finally, what I want to just say is that the Green Party supports the creation of a Council of Canadian Governments, which is one that will bring the municipalities to the table when you're sitting down on serious issues that involve national issues that need all the levels of government at the table. And that's something that Australia has used, and I would like to see Ottawa and represented through the Federation of Canadian Municipalities at the table and really get a jump on eliminating this deficit over the next decade.
We can't borrow our way out of debt. You know, the Liberals have a $140 billion platform, and they expect us to believe that money will just come out of thin air. Justin Trudeau says, don't worry, I'll just borrow it. But of course, you'll have to pay that back on your taxes, plus interest, and perhaps at a time when more people are drawing from our system and there's more economic uncertainty in the world. Let's keep our budget balanced and keep our taxes low. That's how we protect our economy.
Mr. Trudeau and the Liberal Party, we've had the courage to acknowledge that we're still in deficit, and this is how we get out of deficit. Unfortunately, Mr. Poilievre and Mr. Harper say it's just going to disappear, and we know that's not true.
That's time for this discussion. We'll go back to you, Deborah Coyne, for your final thoughts on this.
Just briefly, I think we're getting diverted again into important issues, whether we're going to have a deficit and how we're going to keep the debt coming down. Basic principle is deficit if necessary, but not necessarily deficit. What we're proposing with the Green Party is finding the money in innovative ways, and don't be thinking that it's just coming straight off a deficit, and start thinking about something like an infrastructure bank, other sources of revenue, but most importantly, getting the economy moving so that we are generating the revenues we need. And it's all tied up. It's like a circle. You need good infrastructure. It's one of the basics of an economy, a good, productive economy. We have to get it done.
All right. Thank you. Let's move on to the next question, which I'll direct to Conservative candidate Pierre Poilievre, and then we'll get into some debate on this. You've been the Democratic Reform Minister. Your government has introduced legislation that many people are saying will make it harder for people to vote in this election. Shouldn't we be making it easier for people to vote?
Well, thank you for the question, Mark, and it is easy to vote. Based on the Fair Elections Act, people are asked to provide some ID to indicate who they are, and they also have to prove where they live. Now, you can choose from roughly 40 pieces of ID that the Chief Electoral Officer has identified. So you don't need a driver's license or a health card. You can use a phone bill, an Aboriginal status card, a student card, your SIN card, a bill for your internet service, or basically anything that has your name on it. If there's nothing with your address on it, absolutely nothing, you can have someone co-sign a guarantee that you do in fact live where you claim to live and still vote. Finally, we are requiring that people who are not on the voters list sign an oath that they are in fact citizens. The constitutional right to vote is dependent on being a citizen, and therefore you should be required to sign that oath if for some reason you're not on that list, and that's the way we guarantee the integrity of our system.
It's open to everyone now.
Well, the question, in fact, was why make it more difficult to vote? And that's exactly what's happened. Hundreds of thousands of Canadians used the voter information card in the last election to prove their address very effectively. Why make it more difficult at all?
Okay. Your facts are just wrong on that. In reality, it has never been allowed to use your voter information card as proof of identification, except for a very small group of people in a pilot project.
Proof of address.
No, that's not true. For roughly 95% of Canadians, they have never been allowed to use their voter information card to prove address. There was a small pilot project that a very small number of people participated in the last election. Roughly 95% of Canadians have never used that card for identification.
This is a diversion. Many individuals used that card.
You don't know your facts on this question. The facts are it has never been a form of proving where you live. It was a small pilot project. It did not work. There are many people who get the wrong card mailed to their homes. I had a voter the other day tell me that he got cards for a bunch of family members that no longer live at his home. He could have voted in their place if he were allowed to use that as ID. That's precise. There are a lot of mistakes in the voters list, which could allow people to vote for other people, and that's why we ended the use of that as a method of proving address, and that is the right thing to do, and I'm glad that we did it.
I think that takes away from the bigger picture, though. One of the biggest challenges that we have in these elections right now is a low voter turnout. There's so many Canadians that feel disenfranchised, and when you talk about easier, it's so much easier to vote. Well, there's 1.4 million expats that aren't able to participate in this election because it's been that much more difficult to get, because they can't come home and vote, and the rules have been restrictive to them. And one of the other things that we would like to see change, the NDP, is that we don't want to have 40% of the vote be able to give us a government that controls everything without checks and balances. We want to bring in mixed member proportional representation so that the next election, the votes on a popular vote actually make a difference. And when you cast a vote, it will count towards seeing those changes happen in Parliament.
Now, I'm just going to intervene. I wholeheartedly support a change in the electoral system, but that's going to require another piece of legislation, hopefully very soon in the next Parliament. What's wrong with the so-called Fair Elections Act is it was rushed through Parliament despite some last-minute changes after some outrage. But the only purpose of an Elections Act is to expand voting. It should not even be on the table that we're trying to cut back the powers of the Elections Commissioner or the CEO or whatever. And that's what was inside this bill. There was a palpable sense that the government was trying to make it harder for people to vote, despite what Mr. Poilievre will keep trying to say. So what we have to do is reopen it. We have to have open hearings. We have to make that the actual go-to point. We are expanding the voting, whether it means that we should reinstate people going out to actually sign people up or make it a lot easier to sign up online. It is possible online, but it's still not great. So we should be getting far, far better at registration and being flexible. And here in this riding, I mean, Munster is kind of like way out in the west end of an enormous riding. It would be kind of nicer, even though it's a lovely school that it's located in, to have the RO kind of more centered.
Well, just to be clear, the position of the other parties is that people should be allowed to vote with absolutely no ID whatsoever. That is the position they're taking by saying that they would repeal the Fair Elections Act. I think that is completely ridiculous.
Mr. Poilievre, that's ridiculous. I said open it up, and you will never be in a situation where nobody would be.
All three parties
we're
have
saying
said,
we have to.
All three parties have said they would repeal the Fair Elections Act, prior to which there was no ID requirement for people who went to vote. They could vote without bringing a single solitary piece of ID. Canadians overwhelmingly believe that it is fair in a democratic society to present some ID to show who you are when you vote, and that's what we've put into law with the Fair Elections Act.
And nobody is opposing that.
At the heart of this question was, why make it more difficult to vote? And the fact is, it is more difficult to vote. The heart of this question, the true nature of this question is, Canada was a leader in accessibility in voting. We are no longer. As well, the way we changed election laws matters. And I just ask you to compare. If you had any doubt that the Progressive Conservative Party is dead and gone compared to the Harper Conservative Party, this is proof positive. when Mr. Mulrooney brought in election reforms, he didn't smear the chief electoral officer, he didn't cut off debate, and he didn't ram things through Parliament. He called a royal commission. He said, this is in the national interest, this is above politics, Canadians must trust the system, they must have a say. And unfortunately, the way that this government, the current government, changed the election laws has left a black eye on our democracy.
Canadians must have a say. Your party wants to do away with the first-past-the-post system without even holding a referendum to let Canadians decide on whether or not they support that massive structural change. That would be a complete overhaul of our electoral system without giving Canadians any say at all.
Talk about another complete diversion. There is no referendum required to change the electoral system. It has to get done. You can have a commission. You can have. You can decide on what option. You can pass it through Parliament.
Starts with consultation.
That's time.
That's
time, unfortunately, so we'll stop there. But Pierre Poilievre, I asked you the question, so you get the final 30 seconds.
Well, when British Columbia, Ontario, and PEI considered changing the first-past-the-post system and go to a proportional representation system, they did hold referendums because it was a fundamental transformation of the voting system. Now, the Liberals propose that they would get into office and change the rules without giving Canadians any say whatsoever, and then they have the audacity to attack the approach to democracy that we're taking. We believe in upholding our democratic traditions. We believe ID is a reasonable request, and we've improved our democracy in our time in office.
Okay, that's time on that topic. We'll move to the next question, which I'll direct to the Liberal candidate, Chris Rodgers. Let's get back to the issue of government finances and deficits versus balancing the budget. There are times when Justin Trudeau, the Liberal leader, has been critical of the Conservatives for not balancing the budget. Now he's saying he would run deficits. Not very big ones, though. Why not make it a priority and say, we're not going to borrow any money, we're not going to put that cost on future generations? Is it fair to future generations to have them carry the burden of the investments that we're making today?
If we didn't make these investments today, we would be kicking down the road the investments that have to be made in infrastructure. This is not about balancing the budget so that you can brag during an election campaign. This is about making the crucial investments in infrastructure that not only create jobs now, but ensure long-term prosperity. This is not about whether the government did or didn't do better or worse in the last month or the last quarter. This is about ensuring prosperity over the next 10, 20, and 30 years. These investments must be made. There is a massive deficit of infrastructure. We are already in deficit. We're already in deficit. The only question is, how do we get out of deficit? Saying it doesn't exist doesn't get rid of the deficit. Putting forward a straightforward, honest plan, a productive plan, one that addresses problems like the infrastructure deficit, that's how you get out of deficit. You grow the economy, you invest in the middle class, you invest in infrastructure.
Okay, it's open to everyone now.
Which investment? Can you name one infrastructure project you're going to fund with this new deficit spending?
Well, unlike many of the initiatives that we've seen,
one.
We're going to work with the provinces.
Can you name even one?
We're going to work with the municipalities.
The reason I ask this question is they want us to plunge us back into deficit, supposedly to invest in specific infrastructure projects. So far, neither Mr. Rodgers nor Mr. Trudeau have even identified a single project that they think needs to be funded, which hasn't already been. And that's because they're talking about pushing money out the door to no purpose. And right now, despite what Liberals are claiming, we have a balanced budget. According to the public accounts, which have been published, according to the Finance Department, according to everybody who's looked at the numbers, we had a surplus of about $1.8 billion in the last fiscal year, and so far in this fiscal year, a surplus of about $5 billion in one quarter alone. If the Liberals really respected our public servants, they would accept the fact that we're now in a surplus. But now that they're saying they invent a deficit that doesn't exist, they say the solution is to borrow even more. It is a contradiction of terms that Mr. Trudeau has engaged in since the very beginning, and that's one more reminder that he's just not ready to be Prime Minister.
What we're not ready for is another 10 years of a lack of collaboration with our provincial and municipal partners. That's what we're not ready for. And I understand that it's difficult for some to see the need for vision and true leadership in our economy, but that's what we have to have. That's what we're sorely lacking. Canadians, when I speak to Canadians at the door, that's what they see is missing in our politics today. A vision for the future, not just planning for photo ops and flyers or the next election to brag about something, but truly a vision to create long-term prosperity.
But I think what our viewers are actually going to be most confused about is they'll hear lots of stuff about budget deficits and whatever, and they want the airport link. There are people in Canada that would want us onto phase 3, which is apparently due in 2031. And I find it very frustrating as sitting next to politicians who are constantly speaking talking points and never stepping outside the box. So I go back to the point I made earlier about getting innovative, about how do we get the economy going, yes, and that's getting fundamentals right, which, yes, are infrastructure, but it's also tearing down the barriers across the country. There's all sorts of things that this government, the Conservative government, has certainly let slip. But at the same time, it's being innovative about finding the revenues. Taxes are the price we pay to be a civilized society. And so if we need the link to the airport, if we need not to wait till 2031 when the kids that are growing up now are going to be struggling with kids and childcare, then we have to start doing things now. And that's where the Green Party supports the infrastructure bank and sitting down directly with the municipalities and finding ways that we can get more money invested in, which does not have a deleterious impact on the deficit of the federal government, and nor does it stop the steady decline down of the debt.
What reality, when politicians talk about innovative ways to raise money, what they mean is raising your taxes. This is what we saw under Dalton McGuinty and Kathleen Wynne. They promised to spend money we did not have on projects they couldn't even identify. And soon after they took office, taxes went up. They broke their word. And they went up on everybody, on the poor, on the middle class, on small businesses. And Ontarians suffered as a result. The same is happening now. Politicians, Liberal, NDP, and others are promising to spend money we do not have on projects they cannot even identify. And they say they'll just borrow the money to pay the bills. We know where that leads.
We've got the respect.
Higher debt today means higher taxes tomorrow, and they will be coming for your wallet if they get the chance.
We don't need to raise taxes. We don't need to raise taxes in order to balance the books. The NDP has a plan to balance the budget, and we're going to do this while keeping taxes low for families, and we're not going to run into a deficit the way the Liberals are suggesting, because we believe that corporations should pay a little bit more, their fair share, and that way we can enable that we don't go into deficits the way that the Liberals are planning to do. So my daughter is not going to pay for the services that I get to enjoy today. Again, it's very easy. It's very straightforward, sorry. We can balance the budget if we just ask corporations to pay a little bit more, their fair share, and then we will not have any Canadian families or Canadians paying higher taxes.
Well, there's no free money out there. And that's why, today, again, Mr. Trudeau was out announcing another $1 billion he's going to spend. It's $1 billion for this, $1 billion for that, and the money is all supposed to come out of thin air. The NDP, or the SpendDP as some call it, has promised billions in new spending, but they pale in comparison to how expensive the Liberal platform is. That money will be borrowed today and taxed back from you tomorrow, plus interest. We are the only party, the Conservative Party, that will keep the budget balanced and keep our taxes low to protect our economy.
Now, Mr. Poilievre's comments betray a complete lack of understanding about what the role of the national government is. He turns everything into this accounting problem, which is important to have balanced budgets and declining debt. But first you have to define what is the purpose, the collective purposes that we want as a country, as citizens, and that we need to fund together collectively. And if we were to set those goals, and whether it's what we should be doing internationally for refugees, what we need to do for infrastructure, and then get creative and look back and say, what can we do, like cleaning out the Swiss cheese tax system that this government has created with new tax credits every second day, undermining the equity, the efficiency of our existing tax system.
Well,
if we could get back to having a fair, efficient tax system and find the revenues that we need and do it openly, transparently with Canadians, that's the kind of national government that I am confident that Canadians want.
What we don't want is a party that will spend money that we don't have on projects they can't even identify. What we need is a balanced budget and a low tax plan. That's what Conservatives offer.
Okay, I'll go back to Chris Rodgers. You've got 30 seconds to wrap up on this topic.
The Liberal Party of Canada has enough respect for our provincial and municipal partners that we're going to plan together and work together to meet their needs as well. And what Canadians are really tired of is the name-calling, the sloganeering. What they want are ideas. They want leaders who bring a vision and true leadership. That's what we're going to bring. We're going to step away from from this politics of we've seen in the last 10 years of division and diversion, and bring real ideas for real change in Canada. Okay,
thank you. Next question is for Casey Larocque, the NDP candidate. Let's talk about door-to-door mail delivery. Your party has promised to reinstate that. Is that something that is sustainable, given that Canada Post is saying it's not something they can afford going forward? And is it fair to the people who currently are not getting door-to-door mail delivery that it's only going to be reinstated for the people who are getting door-to-door mail delivery, or should everybody be having mail delivered right to their door?
Well, I think what it comes down to is that if we cut door-to-door delivery, we're losing 6,000 jobs. This is a very good way of protecting 6,000 jobs for a company that is profitable. If we cut door-to-door services, we're also cutting those services for people who have accessibility issues, and also for our seniors. So there's nothing to say that down the road this won't open the door for everyone to have door-to-door services. But this is all about protecting jobs, and this is a profitable company, and we want to keep those local jobs, good paying jobs, here and available for Canadians.
Okay, it's open to everyone now on this topic.
The reality is that Canadians are sending on average 8 pieces of mail per year. The use of our mail system is in dramatic decline. And that's just the result of technological innovation, whereby we use digital forms of messaging for almost all communication that we do now. And it would, it probably killed some jobs for horse and buggy manufacturers when the car was invented. But we didn't ban the car. We moved forward with the modern economy, and as a result, we have new and more productive ways of transportation. So while we continue to respect and honor the good work of our postal workers, at the same time, we have to modernize our system. Bringing back door-to-door delivery to the only 1/3 of Canadians who had it before would cost $500 million. To bring it back for 100% of Canadians would cost in the billions. And when I go door-to-door on the campaign, I find that people are not asking for that kind of enormous expenditure for a system of communication that is no longer as relevant as it was some years ago.
These super boxes, though, are going to cost Canadians $500 million as well. And we can restore door-to-door services and modernize and expand our postal service to attract new customers. I think another issue with the door-to-door cancellation is that there was no consultation made with Canadians, and they just started cutting, and we are losing 6,000 jobs, good paying jobs that employ people locally in their own communities.
And there's no question that in these periods of transition, Ms. Larocque, there are going to be some challenges as we move towards a more digital economy, and we've seen it, for example, with the move from bank tellers to ATMs. But that's the reality of a new technological generation in our economy. I think we need to embrace this, and we need an economy that moves forward into the future. We can't do, though, is spend billions of dollars setting up a door-to-door delivery again that most Canadians don't need or want, and because the taxpayer is not a bottomless pit. Canada Post is a crown corporation, and if we are to reestablish door-to-door delivery, it will ultimately fall on the taxpayer's shoulder to pay for it. So the Conservative government is focused on delivering the services that Canadians need within a balanced budget, so that we don't have to borrow to pay the bills, and we can keep taxes low for you, the taxpayer.
So Mr. Poilievre is actually getting at the real issue here, which is, and the angst behind losing these jobs at Canada Post. And it's that we're in a world where everything that can be roboticized is going to be roboticized. And we have to be concerned about that. I see it every day. The new kind of work world that our kids are getting into and that I'm in is basically episodic work, it's part-time, there's no benefits. It's an entire, we have to manage the digital economy and start thinking about how we are going to give people respectful opportunities to work. So in every situation, whether it's Canada Post, where we're eliminating the door-to-door and that community element, whether it's many other elements that are getting roboticized, whether it's going to be buses that are driving themselves, they may be safer, what are we going to be doing to supply employment and make sure there are opportunities? And that raises all sorts of issues about apprenticeship and training, and for the Green Party, it is the time to bring in a guaranteed livable income, something that does not have to cost a lot of money because you get the different levels of government together to figure out how we're going to allow people to survive on the kind of part-time, episodic work that they have increasingly now and in the future, and yet are able to provide for their families and all the daily needs of daily life.
Work is changing, and there's no question about it. One thing I note when I'm out door knocking is how many small business owners I meet who are now working from home, which is very positive because they put less pressure on our transportation system. They can use the internet to reach marketplaces and clients and colleagues. And that's why we really need to support small businesses. One of our platform items is to continue to reduce taxes. We've already cut the small business tax rate from 13 to 11, and we've budgeted a reduction down to 9%. We're also going to reduce the employment insurance payroll tax by 20% over the next 2 years, which will save money for both the worker but also the employer, because both have to pay it. So the worker keeps more of his paycheck, and the employer can afford to hire more people for her business. So low taxes will help our small businesses expand and flourish and support people who are working from home with promising and innovative businesses that they run right from their doorstep.
So
but if this innovation is so obvious, if these changes are so obvious, why have we seen such a failure of this government to invest in things like green technologies? Why have we not seen investments, particularly here in the Ottawa area, on green and clean energy technologies, research and development? This could be very good paying jobs right here in Ottawa. This is the way of the future. We all know that's the way the world's going. Why don't we want to be in on that from the ground floor? I think we've seen a failure of this government on that, and those are the things that we would be committed to pursuing.
But we have to be responsible in how we do that, because you look at North Gore, for example, a community that does not want the Liberal plan for more windmills. 8 industrial wind turbines would be in the community at enormous cost to consumers and to destroying the landscape out there. So we're going to protect the environment, but we're also going to do it with common sense.
It's not about windmills in our backyards. It's about building windmills and new technology and sending it abroad.
You get the last 30 seconds on this. Go ahead.
So maybe some Canadians only send 8 pieces of mail a year, but a lot of Canadians send more. And I run a small business, and I can tell you that I depend on our postal system. We have a system that's accessible, already in place, and maintains 6,000 jobs and turns a profit. It doesn't make sense to cancel it without consulting Canadians. Everyone's cost of mail will go up with this huge system and this large overhaul that we're going to implement, or the Conservatives are going to implement.
Okay, thank you. Let's move to the next topic, and I'll direct this question to Deborah Coyne, the Green Party candidate. Let's talk about healthcare, which is actually not getting a lot of attention in this election campaign. It is not, of course, the federal responsibility to deliver healthcare services, but the federal government does fund healthcare through transfer payments and also defines health policy across the country. So what changes do we need to make? Because I think there are a lot of people across the country, when you look at opinion surveys, who identify that as their #1 concern, particularly seniors. So for the seniors and for other people living in Carleton, what changes do we need to make to healthcare to make it work for Canadians?
Well, you outlined what you thought was the federal government role, and it was not bad, except that what's happening is the federal government has a much bigger role than just simply cutting a check. And for over 9 years now, we've heard the Harper government keep saying, repeating the mantra that it's provincial jurisdiction and we're just going to give less and less money, effectively, even though it's going to be per capita and reduced as of 2016, 2017. But healthcare is not about just cutting a check. The federal government basically has to get back in the game. They have left things to the provinces to try and wander around trying to buy drugs together. We need a national pharmacare program. That has to be started by and led by the federal government to be effective. The Canadian Medical Association has come on side, and that is definitely something that needs to be done. We also need more national standards. I meet a lot of people going door to door where we know there's this patchwork quilt of services across the country. I certainly know it from personal experience with kids with learning disabilities and on the autism spectrum.
Okay.
Families are actually moving from one place to another. So we need the federal government to get back in with the innovation and get the provinces together and take the lead on establishing national standards for the services.
Federal spending on health care transfers to the provinces has risen at 6% for the entire time that Prime Minister Harper has been in office. 6% is about 5 times the rate of inflation. Now, at a provincial level, the Liberal government is cutting health care, and they're in a position where they are stuck with so much debt that they can't afford to properly fund the system. Despite record transfers from the federal government, record tax revenues, and record borrowing, they still fall short because interest payments on the debt are eating away at the province's ability to fund our healthcare system. It's another reminder of why we shouldn't deliberately pile up unnecessary debt, particularly given that in 20 years, 1 out of every 3 Canadians will be a senior, and therefore drawing from our healthcare system. And a shrinking share of our population will be paying for it because of that demographic shift. So now is not the time to pile up debt that will still be around all those years later. Now is the time to keep our finances in order so that our vital social programs can be supported by solid finances at the federal level.
And as I said, this is not simply a financial matter. When you bring the governments together, when your own commission, the Naylor Commission, talked about healthcare innovation, you will be able to find savings even within the existing system. There are procedures that take place in Newfoundland that nobody even knows about in Yukon. It's ridiculous the lack of exchange of information and useful information. It's ridiculous that we can't put in place pharmacare, which would save $8 or $9 billion to the overall economy. So it is not simply a matter of finances, and that's the problem with this government for over 9 years. It's just pushed healthcare off and said it is provincial, and we're just going to cut a check.
It's exactly why we need a federal government that will collaborate with the provinces. The federal government hasn't spoken collectively to the premiers in 10 years. That's a shame. This is our most important social program, and yet they don't see it necessary to speak to them to develop solutions to many of these problems. Instead, there's a pile-on, they're thrown under the bus. That's not the way to solve these problems. We need a government that's committed to collaboration, that's committed to finding long-term solutions in a positive way. That's what a Liberal government would be committed to.
Well, as the party that brought in universal health care, it's a pillar of the NDP, and we want to continue investing in it. And one of the big changes that we want to bring is we want to introduce a universal prescription drug coverage for all Canadians. We are one of the only developed countries in the world with a universal healthcare system that doesn't cover have a universal prescription drug coverage. And if we work with the province, we can leverage our buying power, and we can actually generate $3 billion in savings for provinces that can be reinvested in our healthcare system. And when we're a stable partner for provinces, we can see a lot of changes. We want to help provinces bring in 7,000 new doctors, nurse practitioners, and nurses, and we want to open 200 community health services so families and seniors can get the health and services that they need right in their own communities. We want to focus on prevention and screening so that with early detection, it's caught early and when it's the most treatable.
Well, those are all very interesting at a national level. If I could bring it back to a local level on healthcare, one of the things I'm very proud of is the fact that under this government we have provided land for the Queensway Carleton Hospital at a price of $1, about 50 acres of land, so that the hospital no longer pays rent. And recently, and more financially importantly, we provided now another roughly 50 acres for the future Civic Hospital campus that will be built over in the years to come. This will be a state-of-the-art hospital. And when the hospital came to Minister Baird and then later myself, they said, can we please have some of the federal land that's in the adjoining parcel? And we said yes at a price of $1. This will save about $39 million for this hospital. Money that can be spent on patient care, on doctors, and nurses. And I'm very proud to have been a small part of helping make that happen.
Well, and you notice the way Mr. Poilievre says this, as if we're supposed to say, oh, we're so grateful. Well, this is exactly what the federal government is supposed to be doing, and not just cherry picking. It's supposed to be doing it across the country. It's supposed to be doing it in a much broader scale. One thing I can say is going door to door and with there is not a single day goes past where I don't receive an email about some service, whether it's multiple sclerosis, mental health commission, whatever, where people are not seriously concerned about what is there. And they are concerned to make sure that it is financially viable and so forth. But they want some indication that the federal government understands this and is going to get in there innovatively and figure out how we can provide financially, sustainably, a much better and more coherent, less patchwork healthcare system.
The best protection for a healthcare system is sound finances through a balanced budget. In the 70s and 80s, governments ran up massive deficits to the point where we could no longer pay the bills. And then in the 1990s, the Liberals, under whom the deficit peaked, made massive cutbacks to our healthcare system. And that had a serious impact on the frontline care people received. It is a reminder that we should always protect our budget so that we have the financial resources and we never need to cut healthcare the way the Liberals did back in the 1990s.
The best defense of our healthcare system is the political will to engage with the people that deliver our healthcare system, the provinces.
Okay, we'll go back to Deborah Coyne. You've got the last 30 seconds on this.
Oh, wow, sorry, I was going in and out of there. Well, I guess I'm just going to go back to saying that we can't, everybody wants to be fiscally responsible, and nobody runs their own budget or would want to run the national government without it being fiscally responsible. What we're getting away from in this diverted debate is the fact that the feds have a role to bring the governments to the table, whether it's with a Council of Canadian Governments or whether it's a Health Council. There's all sorts of specific ways, but we have to set a goal. We have to say that within the next 365 days, we want them on the table, coming up with what's going on in all the different provinces, where they need help to share information, and we can get it done. But it requires federal leadership. It requires the federal government chairing this Council of Canadian Governments.
All right, let's move on to the next question, which I'll direct to the Conservative candidate, Pierre Poilievre. I want to talk about the federal government's relationship with the city, with the local community, on a couple of fronts. The mayors of Ottawa and Gatineau would like representation on the National Capital Commission Board of Directors. We can get to that in a few minutes, but maybe it can be part of the discussion that everyone has, whether you agree with that or not. But on the Victims of Communism Memorial, there's a sense, I think, on the part of members of Ottawa City Council, even some NCC board members, certainly some local architects and designers, that the federal government hasn't listened to the local community on that issue by insisting that that memorial stay in a place that the community, they feel, doesn't want it. What's your response to that?
Well, to be clear, there has been some misinformation about the proposed location. Some have suggested it would be going on the front lawn of the Supreme Court. That is not and has never been the case. It will not be anywhere close to that. The proposal is to put it next to the parking lot for the Library and Archives on Wellington Street. But more broadly on the subject of consultation and relations with the City of Ottawa, look, I think the record speaks for itself in terms of the tangible results. We agreed to fund a third of the Strandherd-Armstrong Bridge, which is now built. We provide a third of the funding for the mass transit project, both the first and second phases. And we're consulting heavily with the city on the future of Tunney's Pasture, which could deliver some extraordinary and very exciting opportunities for the future of the core of Ottawa. So I think we have a good working relationship with our counterparts, and I'd like to build on that.
Okay, it's open to everyone now.
I think this this monument is a perfect example of how isolated this government has become. We don't dispute that a monument that this monument merits building, but not where it's being proposed to be built. No one wants it built there. And I can tell you, with respect to many of the municipal projects that are built, they're the fruit of many years of labor, and often many individuals are involved in all of these projects. That's why you need a federal government that's willing to be a collaborative partner with those groups over the long term. It's not a matter of just taking credit for one project over many years. It's about giving the stability, and that's what we're doing with our plan for infrastructure. We're giving stability to our municipal partners so that they can make long-term plans, and that's the way that you show respect for your municipal partners, in my opinion.
Well, I think we, with respect, welcome others to jump in, but with respect, I think we have shown respect for our partners at a municipal level, and funding, revenues for municipal governments between 2001 and 2011 rose at a rate of 70%, while inflation and population growth was only about 30%. So, I mean, reality is that our municipalities have vastly more funding now than they did a decade and a half ago. It was back in 1993, we didn't have any federal funding for municipal projects. So there has been an enormous infusion already. More recently, our government has announced the largest and the longest infrastructure plan in Canadian history.
Okay, I'm going to take it back to the question, because I know what Mr. Poilievre is now getting back onto his talking points about numbers which can't be substantiated right here before the public, and we're just talking in a void. I support, and the Green Party supports, putting representation on the NCC from the municipal councils of Ottawa and Gatineau to make sure that we don't have this kind of decisions that just get railroaded through, like this memorial, which, without exception, when I'm going door to door, is criticized as a waste of expenditure, and it's just an ideological legacy project. I also personally take issue with why we need it. I think there are many particularly recently in the wake of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, say, like, why are we doing that when we should be even doing something to make sure that we don't forget what has happened to our Indigenous peoples, and we take steps to move forward on Indigenous issues. And I just raise that because it's always an issue in these debates that gets slipped over and we forget. So I find this memorial purely an ideological legacy project of a self-interested government, and we not only need to move it, but we should rethink it, and let's hope we do change the structure of the NCC so this kind of thing never happens again.
Does anyone else want to answer on that question of whether the mayors of Ottawa and Gatineau should be represented on the NCC board?
The NDP has said that we would support that. Paul Dewar actually made an announcement about that a couple weeks ago.
I think it's important, as I mentioned, to collaborate, and the Liberal Party is putting forward an excellent program to fund projects, infrastructure projects, and stability over the next 10 years. I think we should build on that spirit of collaboration.
I personally don't believe that the NCC board should be composed of politicians. It is composed of people from right across the country who bring to bear unique and varied expertise. That being said, there's no reason why the mayors of both Gatineau and Ottawa can't be in regular contact, as they were, by the way, in agreeing to a solution to the impasse as to how to run the western leg of the Ottawa Transit project. Originally, there was a disagreement. They sat down for 100 days, and they came to a very reasonable solution as a result of the input of people on the NCC board. And the Mayor Watson did give credit to members of the NCC Board of Directors for willingly sitting down and coming together for a good solution on the western leg, and so I congratulate both he and the NCC for doing that.
But the NCC affects people from Ottawa, and the Mayor of Ottawa and the Mayor of Gatineau represent 100% of the people who live in Ottawa. So why shouldn't they have a voice at the table since they represent us? Well,
the City of Ottawa does have a voice. There are representatives appointed from both Ottawa and Gatineau, and this region has the strongest numeric representation on that board.
So, Pierre Poilievre, you have the final 30 seconds on this anyway, so go right ahead.
We are going to continue to work with our municipal counterparts here in Ottawa and in adjoining neighboring Gatineau in order to provide good representation. You know, when I was first elected, I had no end of complaints from constituents about decisions of the NCC affecting our very own backyard. Now, people tell me that they are increasingly happy with the service that they get and the way in which the organization operates, and we want to continue to move in that direction.
Okay. Thank you. That wraps up the debate portion of our telecast. So we're going to move to the closing statements now. Once again, the order for these statements will be the reverse order of the opening statements. It's all been drawn at random before our show began. So we're going to begin with the NDP candidate, Casey Larocque, and you each have 1 minute. So go ahead.
Through this campaign, you'll hear others tell you that you have no choice but to stay the course with endless scandals and waste in Ottawa. Don't believe them. Another choice is possible. On October 19th, Canadians can choose more of the same, or they can say enough is enough and vote for change. Tom Mulcair has the experience and the vision to clean up Harper's mess here in Ottawa. I think people are looking for someone who understands their concerns, someone who will fight for them. I run a small family-owned business. It's time that small businesses got a break for a change. I'm a mom, and I know families can't wait any longer. It's time for leadership in Ottawa that will get action for today's families. I worry about balancing the budget and about finding quality childcare. This is what people talk to me about on the doorstep, and these are the things that I want to fight for in Parliament. That's why I'm running, and that's why this is such an exciting election, because in this election, we have a chance to change things for the better. Together, with hope, optimism, and hard work, we can make it happen. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Chris Rodgers, you're up next.
Folks, Canada has always been successful as a country because of our commitment to fairness and civility. We know that how we do things affects the positive outcomes. And we also know that, that when we are committed to fairness and civility, we come together better as Canadians, regardless of the decision that's taken in that moment. The question in this election is really who can bring a positive vision, long-term leadership to Canada. My party has put forward a very sound and straightforward plan with a vision for a better Canada and a better middle class today. And October 19th, I humbly ask you to vote Chris Rodgers.
Okay, thank you. The Conservative candidate, Pierre Poilievre, go ahead, you have 1 minute.
The question in this election is who can keep our country safe from ISIS and other terrorist threats, and who can keep our economy moving forward. Our Prime Minister has taken a strong stand against ISIL, proposing a mission in collaboration with our allies that has allowed Canadian Air Force pilots to strike over 100 times at ISIL targets. We've also passed reasonable anti-terrorism legislation. And finally, we are willing to strip the citizenship of those terrorists who attempt to attack our land, as we demonstrated last week with one such case. On the more broader economic question, we have a low-tax, balanced budget plan that allows you to keep more of your money while ensuring that we don't borrow to pay the bills. There's no free money out there. That's why we have to run the government the way you run your household, by living within our means. This low-tax, balanced budget plan will keep our country moving forward and allow you to get ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Finally, Deborah Coyne, the Green Party candidate. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. This election is about getting Parliament working again for the people, not the politicians. It's about taking power from the Prime Minister's office and giving it back to the citizens of Canada. It's about restoring Parliament as a forum for civil, constructive, collaborative debate and decision-making. Simply put, it's about getting the one government that is elected by all Canadians working again. We all have to stand together for a better Canada and a healthier democracy. We all have to stand together to stop money and fear, manipulation and spin from dominating our politics. We can and must do better. That's why I'm proud to be the Green Party candidate in Carleton. A vote for me is a vote for principled, thoughtful representation. I ask for your support on October 19th to bring principle back to politics and to build a Canada that works together. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to all the candidates for participating in the debate for the riding of Carleton. A reminder, Election Day is October the 19th. I hope you will vote then and exercise your democratic right. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time on the local campaign.